Yes, this is definitely Monday, and Pat McGarry
Yes.
is waiting for me to join him. How are you this morning, Pat? Looking forward to
Grand Jude.
bracing a new week?
Oh, yeah, it's quite bracing outside. I
I
notice.
said embrace, actually.
I know that, but I'm saying bracing. I notice. I know. I notice the trees outside are moving a fair bit, so and it's quite cold. But
Ah,
in fairness, Jude, this last couple of days have been quite warm, and apparently, I think I was watching the BBC forecast. Right, the evenings are now long, and the weather's definitely starting to improve. So long, welcome the summer.
well, they're definitely signs of summer, and I can see the grass is starting to grow already.
Yeah,
But there's a wind would cut you in two. That's the truth.
absolutely.
Cut you
Yeah,
in two. Okay, straight to the important matters of state. This is, I think it was in the Irish Times this morning, where they reported that there are libraries which have been issued with instructions that they should secure their buildings because protesters are trying to remove LGBTQ plus books for young people. So what I was wondering is, what's your response to that, Pat? Does it? I mean, it's not a good thing to steal books, I suppose.
no,
But
no,
I think
Jude,
that
Jude,
the
I
emphasis is
think.
on the type of books.
Yeah, I think these people should go get a life. Uh, anybody that doesn't agree, a book doesn't kill anybody. The Nazis, when they wanted to sort of have uniformity, they burned books that they didn't like.
Hmm.
Dude, a book is a library is a sort of a font of knowledge. I've always believed that, and I think one of the reasons I became a journalist as a young fella, I joined the library in Letterkenny, and there wasn't a big sort of in our house of reading books, but for some reason I started. And Jude, it'd give me a life, it'd give me a career, it'd help me raise my family. Jude, I don't, and if somebody's lesbian or gay or whatever, it doesn't affect my life one iota, not in the least. I happen to believe that consenting adults are quite entitled to do as they see fit, as long as they don't harm me and they don't harm you and they don't harm
Ah.
themselves.
Well, I would share those views largely, but actually, what they're talking about is these books are for young people, presumably
Yeah,
the children's section. Now,
yeah.
would you be in favor of books explaining or talking about? I don't even know what most of those letters stand for.
Uh,
LGBTQ plus, but I'm assuming it's a range of sexuality,
uh,
including trans and all the rest.
Lesbian,
Would you be
gay,
in favor of young people
bisexual.
knowing maybe having books on those?
I would be reluctant to agree to very young people being exposed to anything, be it books like this or violence or anything. But if it's sort of if you reach a teenage years and these books are aimed at explaining, what's going on in the world, you know, Jude, if we all reach the age of puberty and then, if you're confused about your sexuality, you know, I wouldn't encourage people to go read them when they're 10. But see, if you're 16 or 17 and you're very confused about your sexuality, maybe this book might help you. These books might help. I don't know, Jude. I'm not up to speed in exactly what these people are complaining about. But
Mm.
I am very, as if you're asking me what my sort of ground zero position would be, I am saying I don't believe in burning books. I don't believe in remote. Jude, one of the most banned books in America is The Grapes of Wrath and To Kill a Mockingbird. Jude, go on, tell me, anybody with a brain, the right wing in America, because the Grapes of Wrath is almost socialist. John Steinbeck tells the story of the poor workers, and To Kill a Mockingbird is about racism. And where do we stop? Who gets the right to decide what I
Yeah,
should read? Do you
yeah.
get this to decide what I should
Aye,
read based on your
aye.
peccadillos?
Well, yes, I would agree. George Bernard Shaw said that the ultimate form of censorship is assassination. Uh,
Uh,
but at the same time, I think there's a bigger question here, and that is, like you say, you wouldn't be in favor of young people, youngsters
yeah,
under 10, say. But I
yeah.
mean, you're saying 16, okay. See, that's the point where I find it very difficult.
Dude, I'm not saying I would like to know exactly what they're objecting to. Like, if it's protecting young people, fair enough,
Yeah.
But if it's this sort of some sort of religious or sort of a particular bias,
Well, and I suspect, I don't know the detail, but I suspect there's probably a shot of religion in there,
yeah,
along with a concern for young people.
Yeah, genuine, fair enough. But if it's some political ideology based on sort of their own particular beliefs,
well,
go
that's
show
a
it.
different thing.
Yeah,
You see, I find when in general terms, theoretically, let's say, I'm in favor of no censorship at all.
I'm the
And
same.
then I come down to the actual practicalities and I think,
Yeah,
would I like my youngsters to have been looking at these books
no,
when they were 10,
no,
at
no.
11? What
Mm,
about 12? What
yeah,
about 13? What was I
mm,
like at 14? What was I like at 15,
mm.
16, 17, 18? I was so impressionable. You
Yeah,
could
weren't we
mold me
all?
like putty.
Yeah, I
So
but
I'm
no, Jude,
assuming the same
Jude,
thing for young
like
people
see,
today.
I presume, Jude, there are people like me and you who I would consider, liberal and whatever. I
Fine,
would,
good looking too.
I would go out of my way to ensure that children weren't harmed, and I don't. I'd try and find out is this appropriate for them to be reading. But hey, if it's a political ideology for where some sort of like a fascist mindset that I'm going to decide for you and for your children, I'm going, no, you're not. Now,
Mhm.
having said that, Jude, the point you raise, I agree with 100%. I would not want when my children were 10 or 11,
Mhm.
things that could confuse them and cause them problems, maybe psychologically or sexually in regard to sexuality.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
fair enough. But as long as it's done for the right reasons.
Yeah, it's a very tricky one that I think, because again, when I look back at my teen years,
Yeah.
as I say, I was very impressionable.
Ah,
I would, I have concerns that I would have been the kind of person who would have swallowed whatever was put in front of me,
but
literally
Jude,
and
when we were
metaphorically.
brought up as Catholics, I think it made us very naive in some ways to what
Hmm.
was going on in the big bad world. And by the way, Jude, that one of the things that actually helped me in many ways was when I started to read and I realized how narrow I had been brought up.
Hmm.
We loved, and I've used the term, but we had a sort of like an Irish Taliban. It was nearly a theocracy. Geez, I remember as a young kid marching around Letterkenny and sort of feast days because we had a religious parade. But the parish priest said went. When the parish priest was coming into the house, yeah, my mother was nearly cleaning the place up. There was a front room where the priest went and all that. Dude, that was all. That was unbelievable. And if you wanted a job as a school teacher, not only did you have to go to mass, but you had to be seen to go to the Holy Communion and etc. etc. Dude, that was ideology rammed down the throats, and it was a ruling ideology.
Well, we're coming back now to the point that we talked the last day, where our friend, the intellectual Fintan O'Toole,
Yeah,
saw those years as being bleak years. And
yeah,
while I recognize what you say, and yes, a lot of fuss was made of the clergy, and still would be made of the clergy to
yeah,
some extent. And we when for example, when Jeremy Corbyn came to your house, that
yeah,
was sort of an occasion.
yeah,
And there are people we do look up to. We always have somebody
yeah,
we look up to, or at least respect, or
yeah,
whatever, or defer to.
yeah.
So I guess that's the role the church played then, and now other people are playing that role. Um, yeah, again, I have to check whenever I see these things about the grim sort of repression we suffered.
Yeah.
I remember people in the south. We used to have a good laugh. Guys in the north would talk about, "Oh yeah, we're living in a police state." We used to,
Yeah,
guys, what's it like to be in a police state? It's fucking terrible, terrible. Like,
yeah,
and we were laughing,
yeah,
but when you look back, maybe we were sort of living in a kind of a police state. I'm
yeah.
talking now about the 50s and the early
Yeah,
60s.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But that didn't mean we couldn't have a good time too.
That's the point. That's the point. I had such a bloody good time. I kind of ignored most of it. I think
Ah,
maybe
yeah,
it was shaping my thinking, and I didn't know it.
yeah,
Okay, let's go on to the next item, and this is again Irish Times, and they say that the question is: has the Belfast Good Friday Agreement actually delivered for young people? And the argument they have is that it hasn't, and they cite things like 93% of education is still segregated. Stormont isn't functioning. Paramilitaries remain a scourge in some of the most marginalized communities.
yeah,
Now, I know that was a point you wanted to talk about that.
yeah.
Um, is that a fair assessment of the fact that the Good Friday Agreement appears not to have delivered, especially for young people?
Jim, I don't know about that. Yeah, maybe for see, I'm not young, so it's hard to say. But right, okay, right. Let's address the first part. 93% segregated
Yeah.
education, dude. That's without question 100% true.
Hmm.
If you go to Derry, you'll find about 10 different schools. And by the way, I've made this point a million times. That must be seriously expensive a way to run an education systems. And
Hmm.
you sort of go, is this the best Northern Ireland can do because of the communal divide? But anyway, right, Jude, I was told many years ago. Remember where integrated schools were introduced, and everybody says this is the way to go. It was sort of like the alliance option.
Yeah.
Let's educate all the people together. And there
Hmm.
was a very wise man called Frank Curran who worked in the journal. He was the editor before me. And one day I remember we got into this discussion, and I said, "Hey, Frank, someone integrated education. I was from the south, and I thought maybe that's the way young Catholics and young Protestants get up, and they would see each other for the human beings they are, and all the rest." And Frank says, "Yeah, Pat, that's a very worthy and noble ideal. The only problem is," he says, "when they come home in the evening, he says they're living in their communities and they're getting other influences. So he says, what's the difference?" Now, Gregory Campbell, of all people, one day we're having this, and Gregory seemed to be quite in favour of integrated education and all the rest of it. And I says to him, "Why?" And he says, "Well," he says, "if you're sitting beside a fella in school all day," he says, "there's a less chance that you'll throw a stone on him when you go home." So,
Hmm.
Jude, maybe we need to look at it. Now, I remember, and this is my final point, I remember, Jude, they were going to close down, was it, the two training schools in Belfast about
Yes,
30
yes.
years, was it St. Mary's and whatever the other one's called? I can't remember.
Stranmillis.
Stranmillis, yeah. I remember Bishop Daly. I was sort of half disappointed. He sent out an edict that all schools and the Derry diocese were only to take graduates from there to ensure that two schools were kept going. So, in other words, he was continuing to sort of prop up the separation of the Catholic education. Now, he would probably say that was totally fair, and he was looking after the Catholic population. But the thing about it is, Jude, in a divided society, uh, separate schooling does seem to perpetuate, division.
Well, it's certainly true. Like you said, like they go back into their communities, and that certainly helps to shape people to a great extent.
Yeah,
But I used to say to students, well, if we say that the real source of shaping someone is the home,
yeah,
would you be okay with me taking your child for 6 hours every day, all year round? And you
yeah,
say, what are you going to be doing? I say, that's okay. I look after them. You think
yeah,
6 hours every day? God, I'm very sure. Who knows what rubbish you could put
yeah,
putting into
yeah,
their heads. So
mm,
education, I think, does matter. However,
yeah,
we used to, my education students used to bring this up because they sort of norm in the University of Ulster, the way they taught the PGCE, was that integrated education was the holy grail. That's what we
yeah,
really should have is integrated education. And I used to discuss it with the students, and I used to say, how many people here went to separate either Catholic or Protestant / state school? And
mm,
the whole class practically would put their hands up. Maybe one wouldn't. They might have
yeah,
gone from integrated school. So then I would
mm,
say, of those of you who have put their hand up, I said, how many of you would consider yourself to be a bigot?
mm.
And none of them agreed with
No,
that. And I said, how come? You've been to a separate school for all your life.
yeah,
You, by your own admission, would say that you're only meeting with Protestants or Catholics now at this stage in your lives, and at the age
mm,
of, well, but earlier, maybe 18 or 19. Um, how come you're not a bigot?
mm,
And they said, well, it might have influenced me, but it didn't make me a bigot. And the proof of the pudding, in a way, is in the eating.
mm,
Most people, I think most people, regardless of what school they went to, aren't bigoted. I was in and out of schools all my working life,
yeah,
and staff rooms and classrooms, and I never heard in any of those schools from either pupil or staff a word of sectarianism or
yeah,
bigotry or anything like that. So I can see why, if you were, as Gregory says, if you're sitting beside somebody, you'll be able to form a relationship with them.
yeah,
But on the other hand, I think it's wrong to think that if you don't sit beside somebody from the other side, that you're going to throw a stone at them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You
Yeah.
don't have to. It isn't an either or necessarily. It's quite a complicated one, that.
Yeah.
I sometimes get annoyed with people who, you'll hear people who will, from England, who'll describe segregated education as sectarian education. Now,
Yeah.
in strict terms, I suppose, of the word, you could say it's sectarian in that one sect goes to one school and
Yes.
another sect goes to another. But sectarian means something bad. It means
And
you're
it's
there to
not
hate
that.
the other lot.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not the case. I don't think that's the case at all. Now, having said that, when I was going out to school in the 1950s in Oma,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Protestant kids used to beat the crap out of me every morning. They could get their
Yeah.
hands on me.
Yeah.
So, the fact that we're going to a different school might have something to do with that. Anyway, it's an interesting one. Just to see,
Yep.
those are two really interesting items we've taken up. We can't resolve them. One was the question of censorship of books, and the other one was whether or not we really should be getting kids together in
I mean,
school.
they're asking what about the rest of the Good Friday Agreement? Delivered
Aye.
for, well, the one thing it has delivered for young people is there's no longer violence on the streets. There's no
Aye.
longer shootings and all the rest. That's delivered for young people as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now, Jude, I am not up to speed in this at all, but I am told that in Belfast now, Catholics and Protestant young people frequently mix in the bars and all the rest. At one stage, Jude, that was definitely not the
Aye.
case.
Aye.
Each stuck to their own enclave
Mm.
and didn't come out. And at night, the place died down. So it's opened up a whole lot of relationships and whatever. And there's a
Yeah.
very vibrant art scene in Belfast, as far as I know, and the same in Derry. So
Mm.
it's delivered in some way. Jude, you can always make a case for nearly anything, but okay, maybe the fact that things haven't changed as quickly as it should. But Jude, hey, there's no trouble on the streets, no
Aye,
riots,
well, that is
no
a big
shootings.
plus. It is a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
plus, but it shouldn't blind us to the things that are
No,
not
no,
there.
I accept that. Yeah,
One other thing, and I'll leave it now, and that is, if you follow the integrated model to its logical conclusion, you would say integrated schools, all kids go to the same school.
yes,
You'd have integrated housing.
yeah,
Anybody goes into a house, doesn't matter what
yeah,
religion is. And that's a big problem. And
yeah,
then finally, an integrated country. Why
yeah.
have this division between North and South? So,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think the integrated people would need to think a little bit beyond just education. There's room for improvement all over the place.
yeah.
Okay, Una Mullally has an article, Pat, and she says
Yes,
that she's never seen the kind of destitution in Dublin that exists today. In her lifetime, she's never seen
yeah.
it as bad as it is today. She says there's homelessness and God knows what, people sleeping rough, any number of bad things, drug problems, etc. Would you concur with that, as they say?
Without going too fairness, I got into a fairly heavy duty argument with a member of my own family there quite recently about
You,
this.
you seem to have these regular bar.
Oh yeah, we're a very political family. But anyway, I'm the left wing. Anyway, Jude, what happened? There is this sort of thing saying, look at Ireland. We have a 5 billion surplus on our whatever. The corporations are making massive money. It's a great wee country, and everybody's such and such. And like, by the way,
State.
I'm not knocking it, and there's nearly full employment and so on. That's fine. But there's two Irelands, and it's very clear there's two islands. Irelands. There's the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, that sort of establishment Ireland, and then there's the Ireland that Sinn Féin seem to be. Jude, there are 300,000 people in hidden homelessness in Ireland at the last I checked. Right, the poverty levels, the number of children going to school hungry is off the scale. Even in a place like Donegal, you'd think there are 3,000 people waiting to get on a housing list, 3,000 families waiting to get on a housing list,
Where
right?
are they living now?
Well, Jude, God knows, I haven't a clue. Maybe with mommy and daddy and whatever, and rented housing and whatever. And Jude, there's a lot of poverty and a lot of young people. Right, I'm repeating this again. But in Dublin, the last average for a renting a house was 2,200 a month. There was a guy on quite recently. He said, I heard him. He was paying 1,400 a month for a 1 bedroom now, not a flat, a one to stay in. Right, Jude, you look at all that sort of stuff, and I could keep going, Jude. There's all sorts of other indices in regard to what's going on, and you know, that's an Ireland that's getting left, that's has been glossed over.
Mm.
And by the way, I'm wrapping it up now. But how well the rich are doing, how well big business is doing, how well the corporations are doing, does not reflect on the ground how other people are struggling big time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that Amazon's making millions in Ireland affects the woman who can't afford to feed her children.
Mm-hmm. Well, they do give the government of your state its due.
Yeah.
They are talking about raising the corporation tax 15%,
Yes.
12.5% to 15%. And that was always sacrosanct, this 12.5%.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about increasing it. So that'd bring in an awful lot of money. And they could direct that towards trying to crack this homelessness thing. I was thinking in the meantime, you know, that they really, it is, as you say, it's a horror that you have a state that's so rich and yet these people are living in homeless conditions. Take the money, I suggest, from the government mercs.
Yeah.
Every minister has to have a merc or the equivalent of a merc.
Yeah.
They don't have to have a merc. An ordinary car would do just as well.
Yeah.
I drive myself. I drive a Toyota Auris, and I find it very satisfactory. Second hand. And if it's good enough for my backside, it's good enough for the
Dude, I drive a Renault Scenic, and it's a very nice car. So,
I know there are other cars, other brands available.
Let me make exactly. Let me make another point, Jude. There is almost 1 million people looking for a hospital appointment. I think the waiting list now for a hip replacement can be up to 5 years. If you've got cancer, there's real problems getting to see specialists and all that. And like, if you ally that with the homelessness and all the, you know, there are a lot going on there. And you see, if you've got, if you're well off in Ireland, if you've got a good job, if you've got can afford private healthcare, you know, and so on, and you've got your own house, and you're already well off. There's a lot of people embedded into this thing, and they've got their nice house, they've got their private healthcare, and they've got everything else that's going. And this society is brilliant for them. Fair play to them. But in about the last 20 years, a lot of people have fallen off the cliff. They've gone under that poverty line, can't get a house, can't get a health appointment, struggling to put food on the table. The cost of living's gone way through the roof. The cost of living in Ireland is way through the roof, and so on. And that's a reality that I think the comfortable don't want to face up to.
Well, you see, from what you describe, and I tend to agree with you, there are people who've got money and there are people who don't have money. There are people who have houses and others don't have any house. But I mean, that means if you're going to level things up, you're going to have to take it from one lot and give it to the other. And people don't like people having their money taken away. But suppose we started with the mercs, you know, well, they could drive around ordinary cars. The president of Ireland doesn't have to live in a mansion.
Yeah.
Really doesn't have to live in a mansion.
Not at all.
No matter how fine, how much
what is it, the money? Is it the 60 rooms or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I know everywhere does it. But it's only since, to be honest with you, it's only since Pope Francis said, I'm not going to go with this, being driven around and being carried on, you know, those poles they had. Pope sat in them. Or live in these palatial conditions, and he's got a flat somewhere. But there's no reason why our politicians shouldn't live similarly modest lives. The same as ourselves. We're not putting them into penury, but just live a normal sort of moderate life rather than this swank. And then if anybody comes, oh my God, we have to have a banquet. You know, not just a meal, like a banquet. It clearly cost £500,000 with no bother. If you think of the cost of a wedding. You know, the cost of those things must be awful.
Right, sorry, go ahead.
Just a last quick one. The other place I take money from is, and this would be controversial, would be the army. I would abolish the Irish army tomorrow. And the reason I'd abolish it is it's giving a nod to saying we believe in applying physical force, killing people when it's necessary. And Ireland is going to become, is at present, has 1 foot in a military world.
Yeah,
PESCO as far as the EU is concerned, NATO as far as Biden is concerned. And there's an article about that today as well, I think, where
yeah,
they're saying Biden's coming and he'll be looking up his family roots and so on, but he'll also be saying, you guys are going to stick with us in NATO.
yeah.
Ireland, the south of Ireland, irretrievably has been inched towards playing
Absolutely.
a part in these armed camps of NATO and
Yeah,
of PESCO for the EU.
yeah.
That's my big.
Right. No, Jude, right. You're getting back. You mentioned that thing about the corporation tax, the twelve and
Yeah.
a half percent. Back in 2008, when the recession hit, the Michael Noonan, who was Minister for Finance in the South, said absolutely no way were they going to increase the corporation tax. That it was sacrosanct and it was a stand fast by the Irish government. So they introduced a universal social charge on ordinary working people. They introduced various other charges. They tried to introduce water charges, etc., 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 and so on. And it was purely an ideological thing. You'd had they introduced, say they had introduced the 12.5% and raised it as they are going to do now to 15, it would have brought in billions, and it wouldn't have affected the big companies that much. And by the way, they had no other alternative. Where are they going to go over there to Ireland? There was, I think, it was 25% in Britain and various other places. So even increasing it by what 2.5% wasn't going to kill them at any stage. And by the way, most of them are not paying 12.5% because they have so many loopholes. But anyway, Noonan wouldn't do it and so on. But he thought, right, they introduced a universal social charge on working people. They brought in various charges about schools. They brought in charges about health. They brought in charges about other things. And as I said earlier, they tried to introduce water charges. Now that was put back. So there was an ideological thing about it. But now, because they've got agreement with 130 other countries, it's no problem. Up we go now. Now he's going to say, well, Ireland would have been an outlier, and we would have might have been affecting our economic position by going up to 15%. But that was bollocks. It was absolute rubbish. But he just wouldn't do it because he didn't want to annoy big business. So, Jude, you have to ask yourself. And the other thing, just about the army, Sam McBride had an article, I think, yesterday or the day before, and maybe it was Saturday, about the fact that the Irish army, in the event, he says, if there's going to be an Ireland, you should expect violence from loyalists because that's been the trajectory over history and so on. And he says that it's how ill prepared the Irish army is for any violence because they don't have the numbers, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the training, they don't have the intelligence in the sense they haven't got people in the middle of the, or at least we don't think they have any in the middle of loyalism and all the rest of it. So maybe there's a counter argument to your getting rid of the Irish army.
Well, I take a good point. It would be the one occasion in which I would have some sympathy with using the army for, if necessary, violence to
Yeah,
quell violence.
yeah,
I suppose that I'm sort of accusing myself of things I was accusing others of.
yeah.
Um, um, yeah, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what
Yeah,
to say.
no, I take your point. Like, I sometimes think, the Irish Army is a bit like a chocolate fire guard. Its role is very limited. But then you see, right, Russian ships are apparently off the west or down the southwest coast,
Yes,
and so on. And no, Jude, if we needed in the Republic, if there was a Russian attack, an air attack on Ireland, we haven't got any air to sort of fight back. We would be dependent on the RAF to come to our aid to sort of to give us some sort of air cover.
mm.
That's not a great position to be in. But they always say this, why, in a time like this, like, what's the point of having the Irish Army?
I actually think, you were saying that if they say the Russians came in with warplanes, we couldn't defend ourselves. Well, you're damn right we couldn't. And what's
No,
more, I think I'd be dubious if the Brits could do it.
well, exactly. I'm not arguing that point.
No, I mean, in no time at all, you're pushing it to a logical conclusion. You're saying, oh, we have to have the Yanks over to
Yeah,
protect us. And then
yeah,
you'd say, oh, well, just planes aren't enough. We'll really have to rattle these nuclear weapons at them. And then, that's that.
uh,
The notion of violence like that is an escalating thing. And it
yeah,
also, when you mention it, that Ireland's not able, the south of Ireland isn't able to protect itself.
mm,
If that's the case, scrap the bloody army. What's
yeah,
the point in having a pretend you say chocolate soldiers?
yeah,
And save a bit of money and stop conning yourself. But the problem is that I mean, when you get people forming alliances, even it's an economic alliance like the EU,
Yeah.
In no time at all, suddenly they have to have this military thing. And the EU are going hammer and tongs with this PESCO, from what I can understand.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
article was talking about exercises they'd done. The Irish Army is in there working with them, getting training for the Ukraine and so on.
Yeah.
Just terrifying stuff. I don't want to see young Irish guys, or women for that matter, but largely guys. I don't want to see them killed in
No.
Ukraine or anywhere else.
But you see, the thing about it, it seems to be since the war in Ukraine, there's claims that now Russia has moved into
Aye.
Russia, that that they basically that they're moving new tactical nuclear weapons up into Belarus and so on. And there are various other countries who are getting really scared, maybe rightly so too, Jude, that the Russians were when they took over, when they invaded sort of Georgia and they went into Crimea and various, nobody did anything. And I think a lot of people thought the same when they moved into that Donbass area of Ukraine. That they, I think Putin thought allegedly that it would be over in something like 3 or 4 days. That they would just take it over and that would be the end of the story. But right here, right, just moving on a wee bit. Yesterday, one of the I wrote it down. Maxim Fornin, and he goes on the name Vladky Teretsky. He was blown up yesterday in Russia. He's one of the top bloggers. He's 500,000 followers. Absolutely big time nationalist, big supporter of Putin. He was at a function, and a young woman walked up to him and handed him this golden and says, "You're a hero and for what you're doing." She left, and about 10 minutes later, it blew up, and he was killed, and about 40 other people injured. They're blaming the Ukrainian intelligence services, but there are others who say that she's a local woman, and apparently she's been arrested and so on. And I'm starting to wonder. I'm just throwing this at you. I wonder, is there a sort of in Russia, domestically, internally, is there opposition to the war starting to really crank up?
There could well be. I mean, we're told at least that there's thousands of Russians have been killed, soldiers have been
Yeah,
killed. And if that's happening, it's inevitable. When you saw Vietnam, people see scenes of these tanks and so on with Z on them, and that's Russian
yeah,
tanks. And they've sent off their son, and he's a hero going off to the front, and then he's
yeah,
dead. And
yeah,
that's got to eventually pile up. But the same thing applies to Ukraine.
yeah.
If you were a Ukrainian mother,
Mm.
would they all say, "Oh, it was well worthwhile. I'm totally, I'm proud of
But
my
you know,
daughter."
no one very interesting. And sorry, that's a sort of segueing onto something I shouldn't really, but a digression. I was reading there quite recently. There was a lot of the people are fighting for the Russians are mercenary. There's this big company, and Putin allowed them to go into the prisons. If you're willing to sign up to fight in the war, you can get released. And
Hmm.
apparently, there was a fellow killed, and when he came back to his village, the villagers wouldn't allow him to be buried there. Apparently, this guy had killed his mother and his sister, and he was a double murderer. And they
Hmm.
said, "We don't want this." So you'd wonder now, and they give the names and all. So I presume it's true, and I presume it's
Well,
accurate.
Pat, that's the key thing. You're a
Yeah.
newspaper man. You should know. Maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't apply in the Daily Journal, but you wouldn't want to accept everything you read.
No, I accept that.
We know
But
that a
no, no,
lot of
no,
bloody
aye,
lies
but
were
no,
told
they
to
get,
us.
aye, but they give 3 or 4 examples of different places where there's been real opposition at local level to some of these guys coming back. No, and they give the names, who they'd killed, and all the rest. Now, Jude, I can't stand over it. But what struck me is how popular is this war in Russia? Putin's kept a lid on it so far. Demonstrations are not allowed. But if somebody's willing to go up and hand somebody this blogger 500,000 followers, big time, Putin, friend of Putin's, apparently goes round the Kremlin and is welcomed with open arms. And the fact that somebody's willing to blow him up suggests, there's strong feelings. I'm just making it, by the way, it's a bit of an outlier because doesn't seem to be massive, a big opposition in Russia. But I just thought, is there more going on than we know about?
I suspect there is. I suspect there probably is a lot of discontented people. There may
Yeah,
even be organizations that are
yeah,
planning to, act and demonstrate, and God knows what. But all the time when I hear about these things, I realize this is coming to me filtered through the Western media.
yeah,
And Western media, their job essentially is, and media are very supine, really.
yeah,
They roll over, fall into line with what the government wants, and they deliver. So it does match with the Western government's needs and desires to
Yeah.
say, there was somebody blew up a Russian blogger who was pro-Putin. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 young Russian guys in the army have been killed. That thing about really, when I saw that thing about the guys being conscripted from jail,
Uh,
I remember for a long time in Ireland, we talked about the black and tans were
yeah.
scrapings of the British jails. Well,
Yeah.
as far as I know, that's factually incorrect. A
Yeah.
lot of the black and tans actually were veterans from the First World War.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were
Yeah.
told, and I believed firmly, they were nothing but a bunch of psychopaths brought out of British jails. So we're back,
Yes.
maybe Russia is using guys from jails, but it wouldn't be the first time that a government lied to its own people
Yeah.
about this use of the enemy's army.
Yeah. No, I'm not disputing that. The only thing I will say that there was chapter and verse named what ages they were and what the towns they were in, and they quoted various people. Now, Jude,
I can make the whole thing up, Pat.
you can make the whole thing up, but usually there's somebody fact checking and comes back and says this is a load of rubbish, and by and large, eventually. But having said that, Jude, propaganda. What is the first casualty of war is truth.
That's for sure. Any jokes, Pat? Only 2 minutes
No,
left. No
Jude,
jokes.
no.
No jokes at all. Hey, I'll tell you something. I'll just pass the time for the next minute to say. This Chat GPT?
Yeah.
I asked it there yesterday to write. You see, my niece, my granddaughter is called Rushin, and she lives in London, and she's very into acting and stuff.
Yeah.
So I asked Chat GPT, tell me a 500-word story about a young girl, an 8-year-old called Rushin, who's very keen on, what was it? What did I say? Acting?
Acting, yeah.
So it rolled off a story in no time flat. And do you know something? I couldn't have done a good job.
Yeah, exactly. Jude, Elon Musk and several other people are very concerned about how quickly this AI, as they call artificial intelligence, is growing, because it's seriously dangerous because they don't know where it's going. But anyway, just you mentioned something there, Jude. Within 10 years, apparently, printed media as we know it will be gone. Yes. Newspapers. What's your view on that?
Oh, I really will be sad the day that happens. I heard Sam McBride on Nolan this morning saying that the Telegraph and Belfast Telegraph, Irish Independent, Sunday Independent, he was saying that in 7 years' time they'd be available only online. The fact is, that's how it's going. I mean, I don't read newspapers anymore. I don't buy newspapers. I read them online. You just have to accept it.
Peter van der Meer, she's the media house. They own the Belfast Telegraph, and he is already making plans to slide them over from print onto online. So, you'll be getting your news that way.
Well, that's not a joke, Pat, but this is near to a joke.
Dark humor. That's my career gone.
Okay, Pat. All the best.
Bye. All the best. Good luck.